Something very big is happening in the mortal realms. Morathi is finally moving forward with her quest for godhood, and something horrific is birthed into the world that will change absolutely everything. Hello and welcome to another Sprues Brews video. Today we are having a look at the first book of the Broken Realms series, Morathi. This is a narrative series of books that is going to drive forward the Warhammer Age of Sigmar narrative. Now, over the last year, on the run-up to the launch of the new edition of Warhammer 40,000, we had a series of Psychic Awakening books, and we assume we're going to see a very similar thing with this Broken Realms series. Kicking off with Volume 1, Morathi, which tells the tale of Morathi's quest for godhood, something that she is obsessed over for millennia now, and she's finally got together the final parts that she needs in order to move forward with this master plan. And yeah, this is a really cool book. I was super excited to get to read this, and we were very lucky that Games Workshop sent us a copy to have a quick look at early for you guys. So the book is weighty on the story side. The first half of the book really is all about this developing story, and it is brand new story, moving on the storyline from what has happened so far in the second edition of Age of Sigmar, really, from the Necroquake through to the siege on the Varanspire by the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And yeah, this pretty much kicks off after that and tells the tale of what Morathi's been up to in that time. And yeah, it also has some gaming content as well, which we'll look at later on. Quite a bit of new allegiances and abilities and redone Warscrolls. Now, fair warning, this is going to be quite a spoiler-heavy video. So if you do want to read the book first, I'd perhaps turn away now and check this out once you've read it, because yeah, I was really surprised by some of the revelations that we got within this book. But yeah, so without further ado, let's crack it open and have a look at Broken Realms Morathi. So as we've seen a lot of the Age of Sigmar books, we get a little kind of intro page, just summarising kind of what's happened so far and what the plot thread is. And yeah, and essentially this is about Morathi trying to ascend to godhood. Something that she has wanted for a very long time, and yeah, within the pages of this book we'll find out whether she meets that goal. As we've seen in other kind of narrative-based books, like the Horus Heresy ones from Forge World, we do get a breakdown of all the main characters that feature in here. And yeah, there's quite a lot of them, because a number of the factions are represented in this book. We have got the Daughters of Kane, the Cities of Sigmar, the Stormcast Eternals, the Idenith Deepkin, and the Slaves of Darkness as well will feature in this book. So, straight into the start, and we get pretty big news straight off the bat. So we've got this this prophecy talking about Slaanesh giving birth, which is something I never thought I'd be talking about in a video, but there you go. Obviously, Slaanesh has been imprisoned since the start of the Age of Sigmar, trapped between two realms, and yeah, chained up by the Pantheon, so that he can never escape. Now, we've seen little bits in the lore where Archaeons weakened the chains, and there's always been an inkling that Slaanesh is going to escape and wreak havoc at some point during the storyline. However, this book takes that and goes on a completely different tact. So yeah, essentially, when the serpent's head splits in two, beneath the glare of a crimson moon, then shall the newborn one come forth. At the zenith of its exaltation, it shall slither from the belly of its father, and the realms themselves shall quiver to witness its glittering magnificence. Yeah, Slaanesh has got a bun in the oven apparently, and yeah, that's a pretty big deal, as we'll see within this book, because that really changes everything about Slaanesh escaping. Does he need to escape if his offspring gets out in the wild? Yeah. So the book starts with a bit of a summary of everything that's happened since the Soul War. So the Necroquakes happened, obviously, yeah, endless spells are rampaging across the realms. Nagash has got his chief general in the form of Catacross, and the Ossiarch Bone Reapers are marching across the realms, taking out the cities of Sigmar, and they've even been so bold to assault the Varan Spire itself, because Nagash wants that focal point. The 8 points has got realm gates to all the realms, so it's a really strong strategic location, so Nagash has been after that. Archaon managed to take out Catacross, but he has reformed into a new body. And yeah, this is where the story kicks off, with Morathi taking advantage of the situation of everybody at each other's throats and maybe not expecting a massive play from somebody in order to enact her goals. So yeah, the book's split into 3 acts, and yeah, really, really gorgeous book. Lots of nice artwork, and yeah, really kind of deep, exciting story that advances what we know about the realm. So it was really, really fun reading this. So we learn about Varanthrax's Maw, which is essentially a mine, a forge, deep within the 8 points, where Varanite, a rare realm stone, is found. This is a super kind of mutable element. Think liquid warp stone that a single drop off could turn you into a horrific chaos spawn or something. And yeah, we learn that Archaon has been mining this substance in order to try and break the seals that are stopping him from getting into Azir. So yeah, if he can gather enough of this material, he can break down the doors of Azir and yeah, attempt to take on Sigmar himself. So yeah, bit of a strategic point for Archaon, and yeah, within the book we find it's quite powerful substance. Now, in addition to Archaon wanting this substance in order to destroy the gates and get into the realm gate, Morathi also wants this as well. She believes, or tells her followers at least, that it is the blood of Kane, and it is one of the ingredients she needs in order to enact her ritual to ascend to godhood. So yeah, Morathi, she's been working in the background over the years, trying to gather together all these various elements that will aid her in her quest to godhood. The blood of Kane is one of those. The other one is the Akarian Lantern, which is a device that Teclis used to pull the souls out of Slaanesh back when he was crafting the Idoneth Deepkin. Now, obviously that experiment didn't go well, and yeah, Teclis pretty much abandoned the Idoneth. They stole the lantern and fled to the depths of the sea, knowing that Teclis could very well use this artifact to unmake the Idoneth Deepkin. And yeah, this is something that Morathi also wants for her master plan. And basically, Morathi needs to get into the 8 points and get this element for her plan. She knows that she's not going to be able to do it alone, because obviously it's suicide doing a march on Archaon's domain. So she manages to convince Sigmar to send a force to act as a distraction on the surface, while a crack team led by herself breach the mine itself, and she tells the gathered assembly she will teleport this substance into the kind of void between realms, so that Archaon no longer has this material. Whereas we all know, she's probably going to steal it for her own good and betray everybody. Tex and Tyrion aren't too keen on this plan, and they're worried that she is going to betray them, as she clearly is. Sigmar, however, understands that if Archaon's got free reign to this material, he's in danger of being able to breach Azir, and obviously that would mean trouble for the people of the mortal realm. So he reluctantly agrees to this plan, and yeah, sends them off on their way. Morathi also convinces Sigmar to send a small contingent of Stormcast from Anvilgard as well, for no particular reason. As we'll see, that's got repercussions later in the book. So meanwhile to this, we've got a kind of parallel plot of a crew of privateers who have located the lantern for Morathi. They've pinned it down to this location, and they're going to use the Shadow Stalkers to get beneath the waves, grab the artifact, and get out. Then we see the storyline moving between one of these battles to the other as the forces of order siege the 8 points, and Morathi goes on her plan to extract this element. Yeah, it doesn't go great for the good guys. There's a lot of betrayal. Obviously, Morathi has got no intention of helping the people that go with her into the mines, and pretty much betrays them all and makes sure they die. While meanwhile, on the surface, the forces of chaos have managed to modify some war shrines using this Varanite substance to stop the Stormcast from returning to Azir on their death. So ordinarily they'd turn into a bolt of lightning and return to the heavens. For some reason, by using these modified war shrines, the Stormcast aren't able to return home, which isn't great for the Stormcast. It also means that Sigmar can't be warned of what's happening. Luckily for the Forces of Order, they managed to take out one of these shrines, and a single Stormcast manages to return to Anvilgard, so we can spread word of what's happened and prepare for the worst. And yeah, so the first chapter ends with Van Brecht, this Lord Veritant, returning to Anvilgard, having witnessed everything that's going on. Now, Brecht's an interesting character because his ancestry have been turned into vampires, which is something that may crop up later in the book. So into the next act, we essentially see Morathi enacting her master plan. Some Slaanesh forces have chased them from the 8 points and are currently heading towards Hagnar, while Morathi is trying to complete her ritual. Meanwhile, the lantern has been stolen from the Idoneth Deepkin, and the High King has managed to unite together all of the Idoneth in order to pursue those who stole it so they can retrieve it. They're really most concerned of it falling into the wrong hands, and if Teclis or someone of that ilk got it, then it could spell the end of the Idoneth Deepkin. So yeah, that's their greatest concern, as they also head to Hagnar to try and get back what is theirs. Misthaven, a city of scoundrels, has kind of pledged itself to Morathi, and this is like a pirate fleet that's defending the city of Hagnar. So yeah, we get another epic battle, kind of a three-way battle with the forces of Slaanesh, the daughters of Kane, the Scourge privateers, and then later the Deepkin show up as well. And yeah, it is a bit of a awesome looking battle that kind of frames what is happening in Morathi's chambers as she completes her ritual. So onto the ritual itself, and we find out why Morathi wants these various materials. She's trying to create a portal to Slaanesh's belly in order to extract the souls of elven kings of old. So kings from the world that was. She believes if she can consume enough of these souls, she will get the godhood she most desired. In order to subdue Slaanesh, she sacrifices a Khorne worshipper, a Tzeentch worshipper, and a Nurgle worshipper in order to taint him with their essence and just subdue him, buying her enough time to get in, get the souls, and get out. Now, the plan very nearly goes flawlessly. However, the final soul that she sees is heavily implied to be Akarian himself, the Phoenix King, and he, out of anger and disgust of what Morathi has done over the countless ages, manages to slice her in two metaphysically. So her soul is split between two bodies. So where previously she could transform from beautiful elf queen form into a horrific snake monster thing, she's now permanently split into two. One half of her being Morathi-Khaine, the self-proclaimed reincarnation of Kane. She's managed to capture enough power to reform herself as a god. Downside is, because of Anarian's intervention, her monstrous snake side also exists as another form. They both share the same soul, but they're within two bodies. So if one dies, the other one will too. Yeah, it's quite a cool change, especially as that will impact how she works on the battlefield as well. Unfortunately, while she's within Slaanesh's belly, something even more horrific happens. And basically Slaanesh gives birth while she's in there, and a horrific entity bursts out of its belly and flees after Morathi into the mortal realms. And the followers of Slaanesh essentially see this comet of energy flying away, and they race and chase it down to welcome their new god. So yeah, essentially halfway through this book, and Slaanesh has given birth to a child. So interesting times. Again, here we see some of the more gorgeous brand new artwork that we've got of Morathi enacting her plan. And I really hope they sell this as a piece of art on Warhammer Art, because I really like this. So then going into the final act, and essentially this is Morathi putting her cards on the table and making a master move. Essentially, she plans to annex the city of Anvilgard. There are elves within the city who betray the rest of the city and turn on them, and essentially have pledged themselves to Morathi. So yeah, very quickly the city has fallen to Morathi's forces. Van Breck manages to hold a pretty noble and heroic comeback, rallying together some Dwarden and even getting a giant war machine to try and take the city back. Unfortunately for Van Breck and his forces, though, they're no match for Morathi. She turns up, wipes out the load of them, and they're looking pretty doomed. Interestingly, they make sure not to kill any Stormcast, because Morathi doesn't want them returning to Azir and warn Sigmar of what's happened, so they instead capture and torture the Stormcast instead. And the section ends with Van Breck being freed by a unknown person. Now, at the very end it mentions that they can't really make them out, just that they've got a massive pair of bat wings. So could this be a sign of a new Soulblight force coming as well? Horrific vampire creatures? Could it even be Malarian maybe in another form? Because him and Morathi don't exactly see eye to eye. With Van Breck kind of having paragraphs early in the book where they talk about his vampiric ancestry with his family, I do kind of think that it's a vampire that saved him, but I guess that's something we'll see further within the Psychic Awakening series. And then finally, we get the most horrific baby shower known to the mortal realms. Essentially, all of the head knights of Slaanesh have gathered around this newly born creature that is now manifested in the mortal realms. This is the newborn, the spawn of Slaanesh, and as it's getting ready to make its first proclamations to the world, the story ends. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I was really impressed with the narrative in this one, and it's the biggest advance in story that we've seen for a long time. Obviously, we quickly ran over what happens in the book there, but yeah, it's a really, really good story, and I'm interested to see where they go with Slaanesh's child returning to the mortal realms. No, I don't know if Slaanesh is dead or weakened. I assume he's still alive within his prison, maybe just heavily depleted. I do wonder if the newborn is taking his place essentially as a new god of Slaanesh. And yeah, it's a really cool way that they managed to get him back into the mortal realms. So yeah, I'm interested to see where this goes. Obviously, we've got the recent battle box as well with Slaanesh forces in it. We've got mortals seen in a few different products that are coming up. So I would like to see a massive expansion about Slaanesh and his mortal followers, perhaps. So onto the rules content. We get a massive campaign system, 6 games that are interlinked, designed to be played between 2 people. And this essentially tells the story of what's happened in the narrative here, with your victories affecting the next games in the series. Looks really, really fun to play. it gives you a couple of realms of battles in which to set the games in. And then each battle plan, it gives you some suggested forces. So for example, on this one, Morathi's army will have Morathi, High Oracle of Kane using the profile from the Daughters of Kane book, 1 to 2 Cauldrons of Blood, 6 others Daughters of Kane unit, and 2 allied Sacrosanct units. Now it tells you what those units can consist of. So a regular unit of up to 10 models with 1 wound each, an elite unit of up to 5 models with 2 or 3 wounds each, or a guard unit of up to 3 models with 4 or 5 wounds each, or a champion, a single hero with a wounds characteristic of 8 or less. That's a really good way of putting some structure around a narrative game. Obviously from a match play point of view, you could probably work out a points value to play it, but I think it's probably more fun to just use this framework and create your forces from that. Equally, if you don't have the armies that are kind of mentioned in this book, you can easily adapt these missions to represent your own forces in the battles they may have had around the same time of this story. But yeah, you get a nice mixture of different battle plans, some of them on smaller battleground sizes as well, which is quite cool. I mean, there's one near the end where it's just 4 Warhiders or Charybdises against a small kind of force of dwarves and Van Brecht's little warband. So yeah, big games, little games. It kind of ends with the massive assault of Anvil Guard and essentially the last stand where we have the cog fort bombarding the battlefield, and over the course of the battle Morathi will destroy it and then finish off the surviving loyalist forces. So yeah, really excited to play through this campaign. I think it's going to be a great fun to do, and hopefully at some point in the future current COVID restrictions drop a little bit so we can try out some of this. Worst case, we might see if we can play through this campaign using Tabletop Simulator or something. Obviously I'd rather do it with the miniatures, but we'll see what the situation is like in a couple of weeks. So while the narrative side of the book takes up over half the book, we do also see some Battletome updates and some new rules content, which is really fun. So for the Daughters of Kane, we get a new allegiance for them, Zainthar Kai, which is essentially Morathi's elite Scathborn army. So all the snakes, all the harpies, all the kind of non-elven stuff, which is cool. I really like that stuff, and really at the moment to play competitively with the Daughters of Kane, you want to take big blocks of 30 witch elves really. This gives your snake-based army a lot more to play with. So off the bat they all get +1 bravery, which helps limit the negative effect of small units losing a couple of models and potentially fleeing from battle shock. They also get Vault of the First Brood, which lets an additional hero take an artifact of power. So if you've got multiple heroes, they can all, start to get some without having to take some Warscroll battalions, which is pretty good. Their commandability is really good. So Power in the Blood can be used once per phase, and it essentially gives a Melusai or Canary unit an extra attack when they fight. Now, there's a few ways within this book to give those units extra attacks. The new Iron Scale out of the Shadow and Pain box also has an ability that can grant extra attack. So, yeah, those Melusai units can be getting, 6-7 attacks maybe, by the time you've got all the various buffs on them, which is pretty tasty, really. And then they've got a command trait. At the end of the combat phase, roll the dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches. On a 5+, they take D3 mortal wounds. So, if you're going kind of snake heavy, your Medusa-based units are going to be doing those big unit thinning abilities that do a load of mortal wounds. They still do a bit of splash damage when they get in. So, yeah, you'll be really grinding down the enemy force, and I'm really excited to play one of these. So you also get some new Warscroll battalions, the first one being the Viperic Guard, which consists of Morathi-Khaine and the Shadow Queen, who we'll see in a little bit. 1 to 2 Bloodwracked Medusae or Medusae Iron Scales. 2 to 3 Blood Sister units or Bloodstalker units in any combination. And basically, yeah, once per battle, this lets you use a command ability without spending a command point. So it is only once per battle, which would be worth, what, 50 points, I suppose, for your command points. But, you know, it limits your drops, allows you to put all that in one go. Also gives you an additional artifact you can give to a character, so I don't think that battalion is overly expensive as well, so it's not a bad option. Then we've got the Scath Coven, which is a Medusa or Iron Scale, 1 to 4 Bloodsister units, 1 to 2 Bloodstalker units, and 0 to 2 Canary. And basically the entire battalion is immune to battle shock, which is pretty cool. And also I believe you can make this out of the contents of the Shadow and Pain box as well, which is pretty good. Then finally we've got the Shrine Brood, 2 Bloodrack Shrines, 2 units of Blood Sisters or Stalkers, and 2 Canary Harpy units. And basically what you can do is sacrifice your units in order to restore wounds on your shrines. So yeah, I don't know if a Blood Sister for 2 wounds restored on a shrine is a great trade-off, but it's certainly a way of keeping those shrines going and putting out the various auras and effects that they've got. So yeah, pretty fun. We also get some updated profiles for Morathi. Now, since her soul has been split in 2, she now embodies two bodies. So we've got Morathi-Khaine, which is her elven form, the reincarnated avatar of Kane, who has got magic powers, and then you've got the Shadow Queen, her twisted snake form, as a separate model on the battlefield at the same time. So they cost 600 points now for the 2 of them, but they've got quite a few cool changes. So the Shadow Queen has still got the Iron Heart of Kane, so she can still only take up to 3 wounds per turn. Morathi-Khaine shares her wounds pool with the Shadow Queen, so any wounds that Morathi-Khaine takes get transferred to the Shadow Queen, and that still counts within the 3 wounds they can take. So yeah, it's going to be really hard to kill Morathi. I mean, it always was. The fact that they're both on the battlefield at the same time means you can now have Morathi-Khaine casting her spells while the Shadow Queen's in deep ripping people's faces off. Stats wise, there's nothing too different with Morathi-Khaine. Her Worship Through Bloodshed ability only affects 1 Daughters of Khaine unit rather than I think 2 it was previously. However, it has got a longer range, which is cool. Black Horror of Orgu is slightly renamed from the previous version of the spell. It has now got a 36-inch range, which is ace. However, Morathi used to have a rule where range of spells was doubled. That's not the case anymore. So they've just baked that into the extended range of Black Horror. So yeah, she's still really good. Really cool spellcaster, can cast 3 spells. Yeah, she's pretty tasty. She adds 1 to Unbinding, Dispelling and Spellcasting as well. So yeah, she's a pretty potent caster. The Shadow Queen has had quite a rejig. The Gaze of the Shadow Queen is now just a standard ranged attack, hitting on a 2, wounding on a 2. It's got a rend of 3 and a damage of d6. So previously, I think you had to roll over the wounds characteristic of a model, and if you did, it was slain. Now it's just a standard shooting attack, albeit one with a decent rend of 3 and a d6 damage. So it'll do more damage on units. You can use it to, you know, cause some damage to a Sons of Bahamut, Mega Gargant perhaps. So she's got more versatility with that. It's also got an 18-inch range as well. So yeah, pretty good weapon. Heartrender's had a bit of a buff as well, now doing 8 attacks. And the tail, the damage doesn't drop off as steeply. I think previously it went 6, d6 and then dropped from there. Where now it just drops a point of damage each time, which is not as bad. She's got a new ability, Fury of the Shadow Queen, that if she's within 3 inches of an enemy model, you add 1 to the attack value of all Canary and Melusai within 18 inches, which is really good as well. So like we mentioned earlier, there's lots of ways of getting extra attacks on your Melusai unit. So yeah, really happy with the changes with these. I'm interested to see how they're going to perform on the battlefield. Obviously 600 points is a big chunk of your army, but yeah, you've got 2 tasty models there, so I think they look pretty good myself. We then start to get some content for some of the other factions that I mentioned within the narrative. So first of all, for the cities of Sigmar, we get a couple of new cities to represent the cities that have fallen and sided with Morathi, which is interesting. So technically they're still Order, but yeah, they are very much aligned with Morathi and the empire she wants to create. So I don't know if this is a nod towards maybe the traditional Grand Alliances that we know currently, maybe fracturing into more smaller factions. Personally, I'd like to see that, because I'd like to see Morathi reunite all these old Dark Elf factions. And in the narrative as well, there's also a moment where Morathi basically pledges an allegiance with the Idoneth Deepkin. We don't find out in this book if they accept or not, but it's implied that they're at least thinking about it, because they've got a common enemy in the form of Teclis. So yeah, interested to see how this plays out, whether we get a united Dark Elf faction headed up by Morathi. That'd be really cool. We get Warscroll battalions for a lot of the main characters that are in the narrative, and Games Workshop have also got up for pre-order today boxes that contain these miniatures, and I think they're a pretty good price. I think about £50–55, something like that, which is a good buy. So this one contains Sorceress on a Black Dragon, a unit of Dread Spears and a unit of Dread Shards, and basically you can choose to subtract 1 for their save rolls, but give them all +1 attack, which is really cool. That'll be on your range weapons as well. So I quite like this one, and I'm tempted to put together a small force of Anvil Guard Betrayers. I think that'd be pretty cool. We also get rules for 2 new cities. We've got Misthaven, which is the kind of piratical city in Orgu, where Morathi has a lot of her loyalist forces from. So these allow essentially up to half the army, as long as they're Serpentis, Shadowblades or Scourge Privateers, to, rather than deploy in the battlefield, in your end of your movement phase, deploy more than 9 inches away from any enemy models, which is really cool. So these are basically spies and assassins and sneaky elves who can go where they like on the battlefield, and yeah, that seems pretty good. There's also a command ability that lets them move d6 inches after they do that as well, so you can get into range of weapons and get into charge ranges, and yeah, they look pretty tasty. We get some command traits. So the first one, they can use that Shadow Strike ability without spending a command point, which is pretty good. Wily Foe, it's basically a 6+ wound shrug. And then Shade Warlock makes them a wizard, or if they already are a wizard, they can cast an extra spell. If you take a Misthaven army, you get to take a narcotic for one of your heroes, and if you've got any Warscroll battalions, you can take additional narcotics in the same way as artifacts. And these are one-use items that do a range of different things. So add 1 to hits, ignore modifiers for save rolls, heal d6 wounds, allows the user to fly. Pick an enemy unit within an inch and roll the die on a 4+6 for d3 mortal wounds, or add 1 to casting, dispelling and unbinding rolls. So yeah, they look pretty fun. There's a bit of utility there, and it kind of adds to the, again, bit of a Dark Elf vibe by having various kind of narcotics and poisons and stuff. So yeah, I think it's pretty fun. And then they also have their own artifacts as well. So there's a once per battle at the start of the shooting phase, you can make a -1 to hit aura, which is pretty cool. You've got Strangler Kelp, which essentially can stop a unit from fighting in that combat phase, which is pretty tasty. And then finally, add 1 to save rolls for the bearer. I quite like this one. It's not going to go off all the time, but being able to stop somebody from fighting is pretty good. We then have Har Kuran, which is what Anvil Guard is named after Morathian Air Forces take it. So yeah, this basically represents, it's essentially an Anvil Guard army, but with all the non-elf elements long dead. So it has to consist of Darkling Covens, Order Serpentis, Scourge Privateers and Shadowblades. 1 in every 4 units can also be a Daughters of Kane unit as well. And they get the cities of Sigmar and Har Kuran keywords. So that's really cool. Priests can also use Incitement to Murder which makes any hit of a 6 become two hits. So yeah, exploding 6s. You can cast that with one friendly Daughters of Khaine priest, which is yeah, pretty cool. They also get a unique command ability, make an example of a week, and basically it works like commissars. Instead of taking a battle shock test, you can instead slay one model in the unit and they automatically pass. So yeah, really cool as well. Command traits, we've got Bathed in Blood, adds 1 to the wounds characteristic and lets them heal a wound allocated to the general each turn. We've got Murderous Zeal, lets the general cast Incitement to Murder as if they were a priest, and if they already were a priest they can basically use it twice, which is handy. And then Dark Adept, like the other one that we saw, basically makes them a wizard, and if they're already a wizard they can cast an extra spell. We get a couple of artefacts as well. So the first is Life Taker, essentially a ranged weapon, 36 inches. On a 3 to 5 take a mortal wound, on a 6 to take D3 mortal wounds. Pretty good for sniping out characters and the like. The Traitor's Banner is a -1 to hit aura from ranged weapons. Again, if you're playing Caradrons and Skinks and stuff like that, that's pretty handy to have. And then finally we've got the Nullstone. It basically gives you a command point and a 5+. They also get a spell lore. A lot of this is lifted from the Daughters of Khaine spells. So basically it means that your Daughters of Khaine casters that you take in your Har Kuran army still have access to a lot of the old Daughters of Khaine spells, which is a really nice touch as well. Stormcast gets some cool new stuff in the form of storm hosts that are from a storm keep. For example, the Anvil Guard storm keep that we see in the story. And basically it works kind of in reverse to the Cities of Sigmar one. So your Stormcast army, 1 in 4 units can be a Cities of Sigmar unit, which is really cool. And any command abilities that you use from a Stormcast can affect a Cities of Sigmar unit as long as they're within 12 inches of a Liberator unit, which is pretty nice. Speaking of Liberators, if they do not move, you can add 1 to their hit rolls and 1 to their save rolls, so you can make kind of defensive bastions with them, which is a really nice touch. They also get 3 new battalions as well. We'll quickly just run through them. So Wardens of the Stormkeep, a Lord Celestant and 2 to 5 other heroes. Basically, at the start of your first hero phase, you roll a dice for each hero, adding 3 to the result of the general. Each 5+ is a command point, so in theory, if you were lucky, you could get 6 extra command points in turn 1, which is pretty cool. The Storm Tower Garrison, which is a Knight of Exilla, 2 to 4 Liberators, 1 to 2 Paladins, and 1 to 2 Justicars. That allows the Paladins and the Justicars to use this, I've lost it now, Shield of Civilization ability, so they get to add 1 to their hit and save rolls if they don't move. And then finally we've got the Stormkeep Patrol, a Lord Veritan, a unit of Gryph-hounds, 2 Redeemers or Justicar units. And basically, at the start of the game, you can remove them from the battlefield and put them anywhere you like, outside of 9 inches away from enemy models. They all have to be within 12 inches of the Veritan from that unit. So yeah, that's pretty good to get you up the battlefield. We then get a Mega Battalion combining all those, and basically you can add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by models that target enemy units within your territory. So these are the guys defending the city from the invaders, so that's quite nice. Points-wise, I don't know how much that would work out for. I know a lot of these big battalions, you'll probably struggle to fit in a match play game, but yeah, knock yourself out in a big narrative game where you're defending Anvil Guard and reenacting this battle. We then get Van Breck's Black Watch, which again is available as a kind of box from Games Workshop, and this represents Van Breck, we mentioned earlier, who's one of the kind of named characters within the arc. It's very similar to the Patrol Warscroll that we saw a little while ago, only it has to take a unit of Castigators as well. It still gets that redeployment rule, and in addition, the General's Sanction ability works on Chaos and Death instead of enemy heroes, and he can add 1 to hit against vampires because he's got beef with vampires. Moving on to the Idoneth Deepkin, we get some new mount traits for both Deepmare and Leviatons. So this is something we've seen in newer books and basically brings the Idoneth Deepkin up to date a little bit. So Swift-Finned Impaler, the Deepmare Horn ability does D6 wounds rather than D3. Savage Ferocity adds 1 to their attacks, and Void Chill Darkness is really cool. It gives them a -1 to hit aura within 3 inches. So If you can tag a couple of units with that, you can force that -1 on a few more units. Pretty good. For the Leviathan, we've got Ancient. Basically, if you're attacking it with a -1 rend weapon, it doesn't get any rend. Denizen of the Darkest Depths. You add 1 to the mortal wounds done by its crushing charge ability. As we'll see in a little bit, the Leviathan now does mortal wounds when it charges in, so that increases the number that it does. And then finally, Reverberating Carapace increases the range of its Void Drum ability to 15 inches, giving it a nice big aura. And as we'll see in a bit, that ability has also got better as well. So we see a few Warscrolls that have also been updated in this book. The Akarian Alapexes have had a bit of a rework, with the harpoon launcher getting a lot more attacks. The net, interestingly, if you're hit by it, you cannot pile in the combat phase. So that's pretty cool. You can control where units are moving and maybe even shut down a character from attacking if you're wily with your pile-ins. Attacks have had a bit of a rework and shifted around a little bit with the numbers. It also gets additional attacks on its Ferocious Bite if the unit it's fighting has already been wounded or has already lost any models. With that now we're getting 3 attacks and 2 damage. That's quite a reliable source of damage, especially if you make sure you're fighting a wounded target. Movement 14 as well, so it's a little bit quicker. They have gone up a little bit in points, as we'll see in a bit. But yeah, I quite like the Alapexes. I always like the models, and I don't think they've ever been super popular on the table. Both of the Eidolons have new profiles now, and both of them get some much needed protection with the Storm Shoal giving them a 5+ wound shrug against wounds and mortal wounds. So essentially disgustingly resilient is what these guys have got. Yeah, really cool. That makes them a lot hardier. The aspect of the Storm is a little more aggressive now, with his Pulled into the Depths ability now adding 1 to hit rolls for the target to target that specific unit. Previously it was a bit more defensive, where it was -1 to hit you when you cast it on them. So essentially this guy makes it easier for your forces to hit that target, which is pretty cool. We see a couple of changes on the aspect of the sea as well. The Tranquility of the Abyss is now an 18-inch range, so much wider aura for that extra bravery. I think it was a 9-inch bubble before, and sometimes it was a little bit difficult to try and get everything in position because you've got a lot of fast units in the Ironith Deepkin, and with movement 10 he was lagging behind a little bit at times. So yeah, really good change that. And finally, the Akarian Leviathan has had a bit of a rework as well, with its harpoon launcher now doing 8 attacks, which is really cool. Crushing Jaws only do 3 damage. I think it was D6 previously, but it's a bit more reliable. It now does impact hits when it charges in. It still gets the mortal wound when it attacks with a 6. It's a 3 mortal wounds against a non-monster target and 6 mortal wounds against a monster target. So this is basically a dedicated monster killer now, which is pretty cool. Void Drum's also being reworked. You don't count as being in cover anymore. You just add 1 to your save rolls, which means it should stack with the cover rule as well. It now specifies it only affects models that have 8 wounds or less as well, where before, because it counted as cover, certain units wouldn't get the benefit of that. So pretty cool change. Also, it now gives friendly Namarti units +1 to hit, which I think base means they're hitting on 2s, which is pretty tasty if you're a big unit of them, supported by a Leviathan. So yeah, again, I'm interested to see how this guy performs on the table. And then once again, we've got a Warscroll Battalion to represent some of the forces that are in the book. You take an Akarian King and 1 to 2 units of Alapexes, and you get add 1 to hit for a lot of the attacks for the sharks. And in addition, if the king takes any damage on a 2+, the shark takes it instead. So basically an honour guard for your Akarian King. So yeah, pretty cool. And finally we move on to the Slaves to Darkness. These get a new Damned Legion, the Idolaters. So these are all about cults and priests. Basically all your priests get the leader keyword, battlefield role, sorry. So you could have your general as a war shrine perhaps and give that some cool artifacts. And yeah, all cultists are battle line, which means you can make an army entirely of the Warcry warbands. And I think they're between 70 and 90 points each. That's some pretty cheap battle line options for the Forces of Chaos, and the models look really nice as well. I've wanted to do a long time a complete Warcry kind of army, but obviously at the moment you've got to take some of the units as your battle line, so what I'll probably do is build them around the Idolaters as well. They also essentially get a new unit, an Idolator Lord. It is an upgraded Chaos Chariot who gets the Priest keyword and a couple of cool abilities. So they'll get a bespoke prayer that only they can do, which will affect different units with that mark of a god. So pretty cool. They also get the Desecrate Commandability. So this works in much the same way as the Sons of Bahamut one, where a unit can actually destroy an enemy terrain feature. So yeah, we've seen a couple of these now. So you can shut down those Bone-Tide Nexuses and Sylvaneth Wildwoods. And yeah, basically, as long as you can roll more than the number of enemy models within 3 inches of that terrain feature, it is destroyed. So yeah, your opponent's going to have to be careful to make sure that they've got units babysitting their terrain pieces. Otherwise, you're able to just walk up and destroy it. So yeah, I really like this stuff that interacts with enemy terrain features. I think that's a good change and can add an extra level of strategy when the tournament scene kicks off again. And then yeah, we get some cool command traits. So +2 wounds, -1 bravery aura. You can add or subtract 2 from the Eye of the Gods table. So if you have got a geared up Idolator Lord and a Chariot who's taking out monsters and heroes, you can manipulate the Eye of the Gods table to try and get the result that you want. A Fiery Orator, they can cast 2 prayers instead of 1, and they can cast the same one twice. So again, you can get some of these abilities on multiple units. And then Bane of False Idols, you can use the Desecrate Commandability without spending a command point, so cheeky destroy enemy scenery without having to spend a command point to do it. And then finally add 2 to their melee weapons. And then yeah, like I said, they all get a kind of a unique prayer. So the Khorne one lets them reroll hits. The Tzeentch one lets them reroll saves. The Nurgle one lets them reroll wounds. The Slaanesh one lets them reroll charges. And then finally the Blessings of Chaos one is a heal. Essentially, they can heal up some wounds on your unit. So yeah, they're pretty cool. I like the look of the Idolaters. I want to try out a small Idolator force because I think they'd be quite fun. Like I say, using all the Warcry cults as battle line. And then we get a Warscroll battalion for the Khorne forces in the book. Again, this is a box that you can get today, and it is a Idolator Lord and 2 Gore Beast Chariots. And essentially, it just makes the Idolator Lord have a kind of geared up stat line with having more attacks and more damage. And then yeah, he's got a commandability where he can add 1 to hit 4 friendly Slaves to Darkness units. So perhaps not the strongest Warscroll battalion, but certainly a fun one, especially if you're playing through the narrative missions in here as well. And then yeah, finally we've got the points adjustments for those units as well. So yeah, we've seen a few changes. Like I say, Morathi is now 600 points for the 2 of them. You have to take them both, you can't just take 1 of them. And then yeah, the Idoneth have had some points changes as well. I think the Alapex has gone up a little bit. I believe the aspects of the Sea and the Storm have gone down a little, and I think the Leviathan's gone up a bit. So 340 for the Leviathan, 330 for both the aspects, and 110 for the Alapexes. And then yeah, we've got all the other Warscroll battalions in there as well. So yeah, quite a bit of gaming content. So that was a bit of a rapid fire look through Broken Realms Morathi. Bit of an information dump there, I'm afraid. Was really excited to read through the book, and really impressed with what they've done for the narrative here. It makes me really excited to see what the rest of the series looks like. At this point, I don't think we know how many books are in this series and how long this will go on for. Like I say, we assume this is probably leading towards the next edition of Age of Sigmar, which would suggest, well, maybe we'll get one of these every month until next summer, perhaps. Obviously, the global pandemic might have affected release schedules and the like, so all bets are off a little bit. But yeah, I highly recommend this book, if only for the narrative, if you don't play any of the forces. If you do play either Deep Kin or Daughters of Kane, really this book acts as a bit of an update to those books as well, in the same way that the Psychic Awakening books updated some of the old factions. So yeah, we've also got a bit of a companion piece over on the website where I've kind of written up a full review of the book as well. They're kind of going a bit more detail into the storyline of this book as well. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. Please let us know if you're enjoying our videos. We do hope to have the campaign up as a battle report in some form. Ideally with miniatures if we can. If not, we might resort to other ways of getting the video up for you. But until next time, we will see you later.